Oh man, looks like we're gonna have another one of these super shadowy episodes. It's the only drawback of this filter. Let's shut the old cell phone up. So today we're gonna have an episode that's gonna go pretty existential, but I have to tell you guys, and I think some of you are just like me, these are the episodes you love to get into. It's where life becomes a little less mathematical. Being right and wrong is such a pain in the ass to figure out. And sometimes we want to go to a place where there is no right or wrong. It's just a discussion. It's a discussion about how to perhaps live our lives. And welcome back to Deep Thoughts. So I got these episodes ready to go for the last 10 here. And I'm down 3. It's going to be one of the last 3. I'm going to end on the Einstein one. But this one comes from a very smart man. Some of you might roll your eyes, but you shouldn't. His name's Hubbard. And I have friends that are very versed in his teachings. I have some friends that are part of his thing. And what's cool is if you have an open mind, it's pretty orgasmic to listen to some of the concepts this guy harvested, because the way that it's documented even by him is he went out, he researched everything that made sense to him, put it all together, and then drew his own conclusions and wrote his own writings about the connections of a ton of technology, mental technology mainly. If only that guy had invented some hardware, that'd be cool. That way people probably lay off a little bit. Maybe next season we'll do a little episode about him. But I heard this phrase that came out of his journey, and it just struck me as beyond brilliant. And it's called disagreeing with the universe. And, it's what I love about this thing that's about to happen right now is that you hear these kind of profound statements, disagreeing with the universe. People will string together words. I know a few folks that post, they try to post extremely profound things on their Facebook feeds, and you can just see them trying so hard to be super deep. And it's good, because they will get deep, trying to be deep. They'll eventually succeed, and, you swing at the ball, with the bat enough times, and you're going to hit a home run. You're going to hit a ground ball. You're going to hit everything that's awesome. You will do it. So definitely keep going. But what this means, at least as I have interpreted it, is when you disagree with the universe, that's when creation happens. And I've often said to you guys, because like way back in season 1 and definitely season 2, the phrase I use is doing a 90-degree turn on the way that you think. And that's really a physical version of saying disagreeing with the universe. Now, we've talked about the whole Joseph Campbell thing when it comes to him uncovering one of the first stories of creation, which was described as God waking up, and then there was an explosion, and we are all the pieces of God that floated all over the universe. And if you think about walking in unison or being together in some phalanx, thing, we're all together, covering each other's backs. And if we had just simply if we do decide at some point to walk away from that formation in perpendicular directions, then we have this sort of explosion of creation, of change. And here's what's interesting, because I have had numerous conversations with listeners and obviously my own personal friends and family, mostly friends. And people will say, man, I'm in this rut. I'm in this rut in life, and I'm trying to figure out how to get out of it. Or I get someone going, I'm totally content, but I'm bored to death. Or someone is further out into the universe in an existential manner going, what do you think we are, man? What do you think we are? What do you think the purpose of this place is? And it may have dawned on me during this show or a little bit before, but my answer to myself these days is to say, we're not here to be trivial. Would you go to a rock concert or a concert of any musical quality whatsoever, composition with one note? You just walked into the theater and it's just and it's just that, and it never changes. And you just sit there, and there's, I don't know, maybe 50 people on stage. They're all playing the same note with the same instrument. Perhaps they're standing, some weird thing, some Rothschild party. No, we don't. We want to hear variety. We want to hear a brand new combination of attack and decay, new melodies, new setups, etc., etc. Because we are creatures that have been designed to cancel out patterns. You walk into a room and it smells bad, and after 2-3 minutes you can't smell it anymore, because your mind is canceling out the pattern. Take a drug over and over and over and over again, and you'll need more and more and more, to the point that it doesn't work anymore, because your body's canceling out repetition. And so how do you stop repetition? How do you stop the mundane existence, the nirvana of hell? How do you stop it? You disagree with the universe to continue down that path. It's a definition of insanity. Keep doing the same thing, expecting something to change. Doesn't work. Many people have been down that road before, right? I love the notion of disagreeing with the universe, and the reason why is it is extremely tangible for the brain, in my opinion. If I told you that thing back I used to say in the second season or whatever, the 90-degree turn in thinking, there is a point to that, because this statement was made, it was my interpretation of my buddy Sid Mead Design's futuristic stuff. The dude looks at normal reality, which is that single note at the concert, and he looks at it and he looks at it and he thinks about it, and he tries to completely understand why a certain design principle was endorsed, and then he goes, okay, I'm going to go in a different direction. But I want this to be a direction that is new, that blows your mind a little bit. And so he experiments again before he finishes even his thumbnails. He's done 1,000 little thumbnail drawings, usually probably about 10 super intense drawings to figure out which way is the best way. And when he finds the best way, he takes it. Now I want you to think about that for a second, and think about disagreeing with the universe for a second. What do kids do when they hit the rite of passage? They disagree with their parents. They change the vector of behaving into a vector of absolute chaos. That's where we got, all these different things. Usually, what's funny is I think America had gotten to a point where they were able to repress a lot of the rite of passage changes, because I don't have stories from my grandparents, or didn't have stories from my grandparents, about them misbehaving in their teens and doing things crazy. I'm sure it happened, but I do have that from kids in the 60s a little bit, lots of kids in the 70s. I was in the 80s, and so, we had punk rock and, just hate the establishment because it is the establishment. It's time for a renewal. It's almost a not a permanent thing where it is, we're going to stay changed forever, but it's like we must disagree with you to determine whether or not there is something better out there. Because the kids were raised into the single note concert of their parents. The pattern just keeps repeating and repeating. And they're like, look, man, no offense, but my genetics for my creator were designed to change. What if evolution was partially true, and it was fueled simply by the need for things to evolve and change, and it's not a change by the de Lamarck epigenetics formula of you think your way into a different thing, and because we have to change, You think your way into a different state of physical being and mental being. But it is something that's rudimentary into our design because the universe is a very fluid thing. Disagreeing with the universe. Now just, riffing an essay here with you guys. What I wouldn't personally do with thinking about that, and then again, I haven't jumped into any of his L. Ron Hubbard's super detailed concepts about that. It is sometimes possible to disagree with the universe and try something brand new that is absolutely chaotic because you can't get hurt. Sometimes messing around gets you killed like instantaneously. So you'll want to assess your world and find out where you can be exploratory without losing something very valuable to you. It could be your life, it could be your money, it could be loyalty and respect from someone. Like if you went out into a dance floor and you're like, hey, I'm tired of all this stuff that we do. I'm just going to dance funky and just do something totally brand new. Whatever it is, you're probably all right. Enjoy yourself. Then the two-dimensional plane that is the dance floor, knock yourself out. If you're like, oh, I hate my state of mind, and I'm going to start taking drugs to really, go to different states of being, well, you definitely want to do your research. Is ayahuasca okay? Is acid okay? What are the repercussions? Talk to people that have done it a lot. Find out which people, or how many experiences that people have in certain drugs, and then you can say, of the descriptions I have heard, this particular experience is the one that I think I want to have too. And you'll find people. I met a guy who runs a big ayahuasca situation down here in Los Angeles. He actually lives in the Bay Area. It's interesting. But he's been on thousands and thousands of trips, and he's fine. He's a very brilliant guy. But now, is there an inverse value to this algorithm of sort of explosive change to your life, And let's be honest, you don't have to go 90-degree turn to something to create a significant amount of change in your life. You could simply change a degree, half a degree, something super tiny. And, like we always say, one of the reasons why we don't think NASA has ever been anywhere they say they've been outside of low orbit is that when you launch yourself towards a planet or someplace in space, it's so far away, over 100 million miles away in some cases, that if you were off, 10 decimal places or 10 places beyond the decimal, by the time you get there, you're not there, it's not there, you're not there, you're in the wrong place. And we simply do not have that level of precision in any of the instrumentalities here on Earth. Therefore, throwing a giant bus at Mars is probably not going to work. Plus, Mars is going way faster than we can ever catch up with. Slingshot theory, no slingshot theory. So you don't have to go completely crazy. But now think about this. There's a lot of pressure, and I've criticized a lot of the pressure to change society simply because it's a norm that we do it. What we are in now is an atrocious 10-year cycle thing. Every 10 years, everything has to change drastically. Your clothing is supposed to change, although it doesn't. Your music is supposed to change. It does, and it just gets worse and worse, right? The fucking studios, it's unbelievable. They get more and more tone-deaf singers that have no ability to write a melody, sing to a melody, write any lyrics that have any meaning. It's just really super sad. I had a kid sit next to me the other day, 28 years old, and he goes, man, I think that all the best music's already been written. I think it's all in the 70s. And I said, man, I know that's not true, but I understand why it feels like it's true. Man will prevail. Gen Z might pull out some pretty awesome stuff. I have a lot of high hopes for them. Enough 14-year-old girls shredding guitars, I believe something's coming. But you could stay in your lane, as Shadow Moon would say, You could stay in your lane, and by looking at change and the potential change that you could have done, and because you disagree with that path, you say, I strategically chose the path that I'm on, and I will not be guilt-tripped into changing my path simply because the 10-year mark rolled around. I don't need to change this or change that. Now, it's your philosophy as to why you would choose that. Some folks believe, well, I need to move up with the times because I don't want to find myself some fossil that is hated by all the kids and all the people and da-da-da. And, the way I do it is just add another chapter to your book. Don't start hating Led Zeppelin because you dig Kanye West's next thing. Just keep your Led Zeppelin chapter and keep your other chapters and go, I'm actually benefiting more because I have more chapters to my book, more things that I love. I jump deep into it. You can do Michael Jackson Off the Wall and then jump into Prodigy and then whatever. Do a little bit of devil worshipping Katy Perry stuff, right? What we're always trying to do is figure out what path that we're on and whether or not when you start becoming awake, and awake is obviously multiple definitions. You could become sentient and enlightened to your own existence in sort of an existential way. It's you in the universe, and you're becoming more aware of what you are in respect to the universe. And then there could be this whole political, cabal thing, wake up, which is the truth movement, and that kind of stuff. We don't have to worry about the truth movement in this conversation at all. This is between you and the universe. But sometimes you wake up and you're like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the best thing I could possibly do? Sometimes you'll feel certain that you are, and sometimes you'll be utterly excited that you're not. And you'll be like, ooh, I got time, I got a brain, and you know what? I got people who love me and resources, and what I want to do doesn't necessarily cost a ton of money. It's just me researching something. A lot of times it'll be, how do you manifest a thought in your brain? I went through that whole thing with I think, therefore I am from Descartes. It's a huge little thing, The more you can contemplate it, it's fun. It's fun to sit and think and go, man, one, you could be the next Descartes. You could be the next philosopher. You know what I think is really, really strange? In all my travels, in all my readings, in all the conversations that I've ever had with anyone, I don't know, and please help me if this is something you know about, where are the great female philosophers of the world? The female, the right brain native, isn't philosophy tremendously reliant on a right brain interpretation of the abstract of reality? Why wouldn't females be cranking out philosophy books for years? No one can stop a woman, regardless if she's repressed, from sitting at home and writing down her thoughts. We have all kinds of amazing female authors, scientists, Madame Curie, the first woman to find a moth and a switch in an old computer. She was the reason that we call it a software bug, because she put a little piece of tape on it and wrote bug. Found a bug in the computer. There's the women that helped the Manhattan Project, helped the Apollo Project. They're everywhere. So there's no shortage of genius women throughout history. But and I do know, I wouldn't say they're philosophers, but I know some old writing. There's the woman who used to hang out with, I think Aleister Crowley used to study her. And she was sort of a eugenics lady. But, at least we can look at her and go, well, you're smart, Don't agree with your philosophy of what to do with humanity, but whatever. But that whole saying of you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. And I think that disagreeing with the universe is a beautiful summation of that entire thought process, which is to say, what change would you make if you didn't know what you've been doing? Like, let's just say, remember the concert analogy. There's a concert going on in the next room, and it's a one-note concert. Now, I've got you in a soundproof lobby. You can't hear that note. And I say to you, there's a one-note concert going in that room next door. Your responsibility is to change the note. Now, in this room, without hearing what's in that room, I want you to write the next concert. And you might sit there and go, well, what's the note? I'm not going to tell you. That's the past. I'm not going to tell you. But you better not use that note. But you only get one note to write the new concert. And it would be this logic loop of like, I have to know what's in that room so that I don't repeat it. And that's a crude analogy of if you don't know where you've been, the past, you don't know what to do with your future. History is now in a profound level of utter ignorance and repeating itself. We have these fucking leftist socialist people, the extremists, running around pitching you everything the Nazis pitched you, everything every major dictator's ever done in history, which is to take away all of your abilities to protect yourself with weaponry and promise you all these social programs that are never going to work. They're never going to work. The Bernie Sanders, the AOCs, they're nuts. They're fucking nuts people. They're stupid. You know, supposedly, again, she graduated in this huge level of academia and doesn't know what a garbage disposal is. I mean, seriously. It's not because she was poor. She wasn't raised poor, okay? She just, so didn't, pay attention to, the world and stuff. But that's why this is occurring again. And the people, and the thing is we have nuts all over the world, crazy people who are stupid, people who are ignorant. But if we don't have a whole society of these morons, then they just stick out like a sore thumb. They're just the person talking to themselves, screaming, yelling, walking down the street, and everyone's just like, oh gosh, I wish I could help that person, but I can't. But we have people following these people in the millions. And that means that the level of education that has been around now for the last 20 years is so absolutely poor. And the benefits of being an adult and getting an education and the jobs have been so scarce, at least in America, that the suffering is really high. And so they're willing to attach themselves to these perceived life vests, these parachutes that say, oh God, I can't figure out how to pay my rent. So sure, socialistic programs and mandatory fucking incomes, it's just gross. And I have friends of mine that believe in some of this stuff, not the whole kit and caboodle, and they're extremely successful people. They have never sucked the tit of anybody, but now they're talking about universal income and all this other stuff, and I'm like, really? How do you get there, man? How do you fucking get there from here? They don't know their past. So now we're sitting here repeating reprehensible segments of history. Part of what I think we might use with this saber, because I promised we wouldn't go off on current affairs, but this whole thing about disagreeing with the universe, to bring it back down to you personally, is you want to affect change on your life. You want something wonderful to happen. I want something wonderful to happen for you too. I mean, if tomorrow I was broke as a joke, I'm living in a ditch, I can't even afford to make a show, but I got little postcards from you guys saying life is great, I just sit there and die in a ditch with a huge smile on my face and go, hell yeah. Whether I contributed to your your new positive state or not, wouldn't matter to me. The fact that you're happy means that the world is going to go on and the world's going to be great. And I totally have my belief system worked out for the afterlife. It's got a big slice of unknown and it's got a big slice of probably in my brain, but it has zero suffering. I think it's going to be potentially more challenging than we think, but I do hope there's a green room up there where we can kind of just chill. It's like, when you see these concerts from these musicians, for me, the analogy might be, Van Halen back in the heyday, and they just pulled off a 2-hour concert. And now they're going backstage, they're sweaty, and they're just toweling off, and they're done for the night. The audience is going nuts. They know they performed all their songs to the best of their ability. Now they're just going to crawl into a bus and go home, enjoy the fruit or go to the next location or whatever it is. Maybe it's the end of the tour. Maybe that would be a good analogy for the end of life. They know they're going to write another album. They know they're going to go back out on tour. But they get a bit of a break. I sort of hope that's what the end's like, from becoming, from being a human to potentially coming back in as a human or whatever. No fears, man. No fears at all. So I've had several episodes over the last 4 years talking about us forging the universe. My old episode, Creating the Universe. There's the other one, Origins of Man. And the answer. These are all based on the notion that we created the universe, that this was an imperative, that something like this occurred. And we're always interested in, as human beings, in perceiving things, or at least spectating things that are just precise and beautiful. How chaos came together to create a wonderful thing or experience. Some of you have been to events in your life. Could be a concert, a wedding, an amusement park, whatever. A date. You spend the night with somebody that you love. And those moments become those cherished moments in your life where, like, my God, everything came together perfectly. You could have been your first love, could have been yesterday. And so we have this weird appreciation for those moments without anyone telling us, hey, okay, here, kid, this is what you do. You're going to get yourself a good gal, and you're going to be, chivalrous to her. You're going to open the door and do all this other stuff so this one exact moment can occur, and you're going to fall in love with her, and you're going to appreciate her, and whatever the hell she wants, whatever the hell you want. You're going to go to a cool location, you set it up, and just have these amazing things. Nobody ever says that. They say bits and pieces of that, but they don't put it all together such that you have these historic honeymoons anymore. I'm not sure that honeymoons really have the punch they used to have. Maybe in other parts of the world, but in lots of parts of the world, honeymoons are arranged weddings. How weird is that? Yeah, I never met you before. Now I'm going to pork you. Isn't that a little weird? Hell, maybe that's a huge turn on. Because the thing is how could you call it making love? You never even met this person before. I love you because my parents said so. And your parents said so. I talked about, it's funny, I found that old episode where I mentioned driving a Lamborghini for almost 6 months, and from time to time, and I kept saying hurricane. It's a hurricane. But I got a chance to drive one of those cars on and off. And again, I'm not a big car guy. I'm just not, I definitely had my mind changed a little bit in terms of at least that particular vehicle. But the first time I got behind the wheel of a 2016 Huracan, it was a religious experience. And it wasn't because, hey, look at me, I'm driving a fancy car at all. In fact, that made me a little nervous. First time I ever drove one, I drove it right through LA traffic, and I drove it for like 35 miles in jam traffic in LA. And just imagine, you're worried about making a personal mistake to hurt the car. It's like a $250,000 car. But then you're worried about other people hitting you because they're looking at you. So there's kind of a love-hate relationship with that whole thing. But I'm looking at the precision of this vehicle. I'm operating this vehicle. I am feeling it go from 40 to 80 in a matter of split seconds. It felt good. It hugged the road perfectly. The command center inside this car was a spaceship. That's all I can say. It was like, flip switches and the toggles underneath to start the car, to back up, and it just the freaking controls for the blinker, which are a little bit like a motorcycle. Everything was amazing. Plus, I was driving in like the basic mode. Once you punch it up to the race mode, it's like, the engine's gurgling, and it's just, oh my God. It was a tremendous experience, and it was very inspiring for me personally to say, okay, maybe you do want to make enough money to have something of this utter perfection in your life, And again, it's not a boastful thing. It is, you want to be around a keystone of this level of perfection created in Italy by master engineers, master designers, master thinkers, such that when you sit in this, it harmonizes its frequency to you, such that you will then exude that frequency to the outside world. If everything I did in my life, from a personal relationship to a technical invention, exuded the perfection of this car, I would be famous for being amazing, you know? And so that's a very rare thing to have something that inspiring, and it was very inspiring for me. Now let's back up that whole experience and look at what it would take for me to achieve that kind of wealth. I would have to disagree with the universe to create that change in my life, to go, well, I go into this, I've got this cycle of things that I do. And so, one of the things I do, obviously, is I screenwrite. And so for me, if I come up with another script that just blows everybody's mind, that I can go back into what I do. It's like Prince writing music. He still wrote music and blew our mind, album after album after album, single after single after single. So you can be in sort of this machine, but the machine itself cranks out a new fortune cookie. And the fortune cookie is different every time, and it will take you down a different path. But I think the following. This is one of the reasons I want to get into this episode and this subject matter, is that I think that people believe or don't know that they can disagree with the universe. And I think if I said that to young people, it might just go right over their head. Although, hopefully the new generation, it doesn't. But they may believe that I'm talking about disagreeing with their parents, instead of just philosophically engaging the universe at a different level. Now, obviously, as a child, you have massive influence from your parental units, and hopefully you have good parents, and respecting what they say benefits you greatly. And then your disagreeing with the universe is merely building a wing on the side of the house that's already really valuable to begin with, because you got a good foundation. Now, some folks, it seems to be a growing thing in Gen X and millennials, where their parents are shitty parents. I know of situations where one parent's got their crap together, the other parent doesn't. They're not together, and the parent that doesn't have their crap together is envious or self-loathing, and then demonizes the other parent, so that the kid who spends most of their time with that parent starts to adopt that, that infantile thinking, and then they cut themselves off from a parent that's actually willing to give them the knowledge that they actually seek. And to the degree that they adopt this stupid theory, I've seen kids really suffer. Everything that they want to achieve, the one parent could give them the keys to their life. Not the parent's personal goals for them, but their own goals for themselves. It's a vicious cycle, which is why when you break society, it's rough. When you see, any of you have ever heard an engine that's really got serious issues in a car. And most of you have heard an engine that's clanking or making a weird noise. That's usually how you bring it into the service centers. It could be a little tiny thing that starts destroying the entire engine. Back in the day, we used to have problems with radiator caps. Radiator caps lose their seal, meaning their ability to hold the pressure in the radiator. The entire engine can blow. The entire engine can vapor lock because it overheats badly. That piece, that little part, the little cap's about $15, but it can cause easily $8,000 worth of damage in your car, depending on what kind of car you drive. My old partner, he had a car. He had an Intrepid. And we were going to do we did a conference up in LA. Up in San Francisco, from LA. And he neglected to repair his engine, and it was running super hot. And so he Said, oh, I'm going to drive up, visit my parents, and then we'll go to these meetings and go to this conference, and then we'll save money and drive home in my car. I said, but doesn't your car have issues? Yeah, well, I just have water in the car, and, we just keep having to, just have to watch the heat, and then I pour new water in it. We're about, I don't know, it's about 450 miles between us and San Francisco. I think we were 200 miles from LA, and his engine just stops. And we had been, trying to service it, and I'm sitting there going, this is bullshit, man. We'll cut you a bonus check. You're a founder of the company. Get your engine fixed. What's it going to cost us, $1,000 total? Well, we drove the car until it utterly melted itself. It was, I think, $4,500 worth of damage. It completely melted his engine. All the seals and rubber gaskets melted. And so we're on the side of the highway, the Interstate 5. It's dusk. And I mean, it's late dusk. Like, we got maybe 10, 15 minutes of light. We're on the side of the frickin' highway, trying to call a wrecker. We got towed to this dealership. I think it was like a Friday or something. It was like they weren't going to be open anytime soon. And I can't remember how we got home. Isn't that crazy? I just mapped it out. I was like, oh my God, this was the stupidest thing ever. And he personally ate the debt. And it was just, whatever. He needed to disagree with the universe is what he needed to do, right? But to go back to the point I was making 20 minutes ago, a lot of times I get approached by individuals, and the thing that they haven't figured out is that they need to make a radical change to their life. They will tell me all these circumstances in their life that don't work. And for those of you who are single and you're not married with kids, boy, your solution is right there in front of your face, and it could be so exciting. It doesn't matter if you're 25, 18, or 65. If you're completely nomadic by yourself, I mean, you got loved ones and friends in the world, but you don't live with them. You can do anything that you can physically pull off. You could say, look, I'm going to look for the job that I do in Hawaii, in Liechtenstein. You're going to look wherever the hell you want to be. Just make a change. Maybe just go down to the next town over. Maybe you don't. Maybe you stay in your town, but you change completely what job you work for. Maybe it's just changing what company you work for, but you do the same thing. Maybe you got a roommate that's a super pain in the ass, so you change. What worked before doesn't work anymore, and so it's just time to disagree with the universe. Imagine that. You're in this major argument with somebody, and it's just getting to that pinnacle thing where usually you flip off somebody or you say something bad you regret. And instead of that, you say, I think it's just time I disagree with the universe. And you walk off. And the person's like, I can't even get mad at that, but what the hell does that mean? Yeah, I mean, whatever. And you're off on your new journey. Get a pad and paper and a pen and design your future. I have this, and I'll see if I can't dig this out. This will be kind of a funny little thing for you guys. Every time I reference putting an image into it, one of these videos, I angst later when I get into editing bay. I'm like, oh God, I can't just edit this together. I got to go find the photograph. When I was a kid, let's say kid being defined as maybe 14, 15 years old, I drew, I think it's like a perspective drawing of my dream bedroom. And it was all based on 1980, perception of things, but I put a stereo in there, a keyboard, a computer, a bed, I can't even put my dresser in there, whatever, and a desk. And it was just total cool laboratory. And so I drew it, and it was like my fantasy thing. And I sort of, I felt like I could get it, but I sort of felt like I couldn't get it too, or I was worried, man, maybe I'm biting off too much. Maybe I can't pull this off. And I probably had that by 1993. So about 10 years later, I had everything that I ever wanted and more. And that's how powerful it is to write something down with your hand, not in some computer, And I'm not an old fart. I live in digital world pretty much 99% of the time. But writing it down on paper is the manifestation of reality, because digital bits in some silicon chip are not reality, at least as we manifest it into existence. Get yourself a pad and paper. I've got these little notebooks that have tons of pages in them, but no writing, my little journals. And I always have a pen in there, and they usually come with a little wrapper cord, little spongy cord that holds it together. And what's funny is the ones that I have that are like maybe a 5x7, I find those a little harder to carry around and fill up. But the little tiny ones that are just like, I don't know, 4x5s or even 3x4s, whatever they are, my God, I'll fill that thing up just to the point it's finished. So sometimes the little tiny books are the best ones to carry around. But find the size that works for you. My suggestion is to find one that's got either a leather back or a faux leather back. It's got some sturdiness to it. Make sure the pages inside have some sturdiness to it, and just carry that thing around with you constantly. Decorate the outside. Or don't. Whatever the hell you want. It's yours to tear up, to do what you want with. Write all over the place. There are no rules. Hey man, one page you might doodle a picture, and the other one you're philosophizing about how to create a UFO or what gravity might be or the flat earth and all that kind of stuff. Have fun. It is your life. It is your creation. And the more that you express yourself into a book, personally, one, you're creating a really cool little heirloom for your family or for yourself. But two, what are you doing? You're experimenting with creativity and your thought process. Isn't that cool? Isn't that the bone in your brain you want to actually manifest skills into? If you're creative on paper in these two-dimensional planes of ink and whatever, paint. I mean, you could get paint out and paint in your book. Who gives a shit, right? It's yours. It's your life, man. It's your little world. You see it all the time in movies, and you're probably like, oh, that's really cool. He or she had this diary, and isn't that neat? And then you get home, and you're like, I don't do that. Do it. Disagree with the universe. Do something new. Manifest. And I listen to these episodes back, and I have to say, the thing I rarely mention, I do mention it from time to time, but if you are absolutely content with your life the way it is, please feel no pressure by these episodes to make any changes. It's cool if you're cool, man. You're not out of the in crowd in your brain because you don't do all these crazy existential things. If you don't go to the South Pole to find the dome wall, you're not uncool. It's just not your thing, and you're totally happy with what you have. In fact, if anything, you're the victors of life. You're the ones that live in bliss. So feel no pressure. But again, I don't know how much those individuals reach out to shows like this to listen to some guy blather in his backyard. I think if you're listening to me, you're on a journey. Doesn't mean you have to change anything to be on that journey. But sometimes you'll just sort of reach out and do something different. I have this, I'm going to share this with you guys since we're deep inside the episode, and usually only the deep followers get past the 30-minute mark. And that's one of the secrets of this show, what I do in this show, just so you guys know. I put things after the 30-minute mark, about the 35-minute mark for you chronic listeners. And it pays off 100%. It's so funny. When I learned that I wouldn't have a bunch of douchebags commenting on the channel by making things more than 10 minutes, I doubled down on everything being over an hour. It's fun. But I had, I think I told you guys that my writing mentor, screenwriting mentor, and I both went off on a little journey. I think I said this in an episode. I know I mentioned this to a friend of mine in the last couple months. But we experimented with writing novels, because neither one of us had done it in a really, really long time. I don't even know if he'd ever done it ever. But we went off and, we're working on something together as well. And so we came back and we were doing lunch, and it was like we had this funny moment driving to lunch, and I was looking at him, and I said, well, how you doing with yours? And And he goes, well, it's slow going, man. I said, isn't it? And I felt like, so I get into this short story, which I'm going to share with you guys because it's kind of fun. It's one of those things where someone could take your story, whatever. Mine's pretty esoteric, but I started writing my short story and I felt like I had labored for hours on what I was writing. And I think when I was done, I don't know, I was under 7 pages. But I felt like I had run 4 writing marathons in a row. With that much effort into those 7 pages, I probably would have written 45 pages in a screenplay. And part of it was because I didn't sit down and scope out the entire novel. I was just kind of going with the flow and letting it happen to me. But my story is this. And this kind of dovetails with the subject matter, which is why I'm sharing this with you. It's about a guy who lives inside of a cube. And for him, he has never seen anything but the interior of this cube. It's sort of unknown what his past is, how he got to this point. He's probably, let's say, in his early 30s. He's not like us because he's always been in this cube. And I'd say the cube is probably 12 foot square, no more than 15 foot square. And it has everything that he would ever need. It has a little bunk bed. It has a workstation, like a desk. It's all kind of gray inside and super smooth. It's been brilliantly designed. And so you have this notion that, okay, whoever put him in this thing is really trying to industrialize this existence. His food comes through this dispenser, this sort of like TV dinner sort of dispenser over by his sink. I didn't get to the point where I had him bathing or anything. Obviously, something would have to happen, I guess. But what I do is I'm I don't get a chance to talk in a sort of third-person voice in screenwriting, right? I don't get to say he's thinking this, he's thinking that, but that's what I did. And so I'm taking that perspective. It's not a first-person thing. But he has a ritual, and he gets up, and he does this ritual every single day. And there are sounds and tones and information that comes up on displays within his cube that tell him when to queue up for the next thing. And talk about a guy that's not disagreeing with the universe. But one day, he wakes up, and he's going through his routine, and he's working on his computer. I can't remember what the hell I made him do on the computer. It's sort of unimportant. Maybe just like does data processing. Who the hell knows, right? But here comes the food. And it's kind of a evening dinner thing. And in pops a cookie. A really bright pink cookie. And he has never seen color outside of his gray world in his entire life. He has never eaten sugar in pure form in his entire life. His taste buds, which are fully functional to process that taste, have never delighted in that flavor before. And he's actually scared of the cookie. For him, there is no sense that that is edible, because it doesn't match any food pellet dinner he has ever had. It's not the standard like meat cake that he might be getting. And there's this slow moment where he is going at this cookie. It's a great Black Mirror, let me tell you. And eating this cookie takes a long time for him to even remotely touch it to his tongue and feel this amazing sensation. And that's what he does at first. He just touches it to his tongue because it's got this crystallized sugar on the outside, kind of like a sugar cookie. But he's terrified of it as much as he's intrigued by it. And what I'm trying to do is to demonstrate when you are introduced to a new paradigm, it could be the most intoxicating thing and the most terrifying thing all at the same time. You know, again, I've shared with you guys, friends of mine, that in no specific detail, because I only have maybe one friend that's really done this in any intense way, and she was completely done with this phase in her life by the time I talked to her. like 10 years, 11 years past this moment. But imagine you see these people with like tracks in their arms from drugs. Don't you think it's terrifying to poke yourself with a needle and inject yourself with the drug? Because you might be able to put something in your mouth, and that's why a lot of people are afraid of acid, because they put this piece of paper or they put a droplet on their tongue, and when they start having this thing about an hour later, they can't just turn it off. When you get drunk, you can't just turn it off. You got to go through it, puke your guts out, whatever it is you're going to do. Which is why you have to be mentally prepared for these things. And so this guy's just got a little sugar cookie. And now, of course, as the reader, you're going to start wondering, where'd this thing come from? What is going on here? If this thing for 35 years has only been dispensing the grayest, Orwellian food, who made the cookie? Where did the recipe come from? Where did the ingredients come from? How is this thing in existence? Are we in a reality? Are we in some virtual reality? So by eating this cookie, he changes and evolves his brain. One, the high of the cookie. When he finally starts to nibble on it and realize, oh my God, this is like sex in my mouth, right? He lays down in a sugar high. He sees his world differently. Now, I haven't decided exactly whether or not I want to give him any hallucinogenic experience, but for him, it is a hallucinogenic experience just having sugar in its pure form. Who knows what that would be like? Maybe some Amish kids know what it's like to move to the big city and, bite into a Mrs. Fields cookie and just have like some crazy ADD moment, right? But and this is, okay, so as far as I got was this. Obviously, once he eats the cookie, he's now super addicted to it, and he goes through a mourning phase, meaning he's sulking in the fact that there's not one the next day, or he's fearful there won't be one the next day. And the next thing that comes through is a little mouse. And he has never seen any life of any kind. He's not quite sure what the hell that thing is. He's also not pre-indoctrinated to fear it. And so there's this bit of a taking care of another being phase for him. And the way I'm writing the story is that someone is feeding him this stuff to condition him so that he can leave. To give him, like, I'm giving you the cookies so you can pay attention. This something is different. I need you to start disagreeing with the universe and changing your paradigm of thinking. I'm going to let you have a mouse because I need you to realize that there are other things in this universe you don't understand, but things that could use your help. Eventually starts feeding this little guy. And then eventually, of course, the mouse dies because it's a natural process. So what I'm doing in this story is I'm slowing down every sense that we take for granted such that the reader can get how much we take for granted. How much of the paradigm of your existence is this mundane one-note concert? And I have a whole adventure for this dude once he gets out of the cube. What's interesting for me, I'll visit this in the most metaphorical fashion I could possibly do it, is that we are seeing folks, big giant groups of the world, being conditioned into bad things. But in order to change from a good thing to a bad thing, they have to have disagreed with the universe as it exists and adopt a new thing. Well, imagine you got a one-note concert, as I keep saying, but it's a fairly decent note. I mean, it doesn't hurt your mind. And then imagine the concert is a real sawtooth synth keyboard that is playing essentially what sounds like a saw blade cutting wood. And it's not that nice sound. It's a really just rancid sound in your brain. You want to get out of that concert as much as you possibly can because it's hurting everything that is your brain. And so what I want to highlight with you is that there are individuals that are obviously in control of which note is being played. What paradigm is your normal mainstay substrate of existence? And they can play a good note or they can play a bad note. They can crash your economy, crash your future. I mean, it is so unbelievably creative today that they have made, heterosexuality a bad thing. They make women not like men, men not like women. And so for anyone who's following their genetic code to procreate, depending on where you live in the world, the more first world you live, the more you're in this state of horrendous cognitive dissonance with your own genetics. You've got Bill Nye the douchebag guy up there trying to confuse your kids. He is trying to change the frequency from a good frequency to a sawtooth frequency so that your kid rebels, disagrees with the universe, except that the deep state that controls all of the options, the perceived options that your kid might follow or even you might follow. You essentially go up to a vending machine, and everything in that vending machine is your doom. Some of it looks sexy because it's in a nice little wrapper, but if you eat it, you go down the tubes. You lose your mind, you lose your freedom, you lose your destiny. You catch a disease that they've prepared for you, a cancer. And you're hungry. That's the other thing too. You're super hungry and you're looking at all this and you're thinking, geez, I got to put something in my belly. I am like 2 seconds from going absolutely feral. And you might, let's just keep it in some really metaphorical analogy here. Some Deep Thoughts Fantasia cartoon. What if you look off to your left, and for whatever reason you can see 100 miles away, or 50 miles away, and you see the other vending machine? Maybe even put a telescope on it, and you're like, oh, that stuff's not so bad. So I'm going to eat this crappy stuff just to satiate my stomach so that I can make it to the next machine and perhaps get something better. And your hope is, well, I hope what I'm eating right now doesn't kill me before I get there. And to your surprise, you pull the lever, you get a little snack out of this doomsday machine, and you don't die. As a matter of fact, maybe you're coked out of your brain, and you get to that other machine as fast as possible. But by the time you get to the other machine, your thought process has changed so much because of the poison you ingested that you're looking at totally healthy, non-GMO options for your brain, and that's a metaphor for positivity in your life, not exactly nutrition. But now you're looking at your salvation in the second machine. Everything in there is the destiny that prior to eating from that other machine, this is what you wanted. There's your career in that. There's your, happy life right there. There's your perfect children, your perfect spouse. But because you ate the poison, you believed all these people trying to confuse your gender identification. They tried to talk you into transhumanism. They tried to talk you into denying who you are as a human being and hating your own race. Your eyes have changed. Your perception has changed. And even though you're looking at something you need to ingest it to repair yourself. It no longer looks appetizing. And the only thing you want to do is get back to that previous machine and eat more poison. Now imagine we have some Greek theater narrator that shows up at the other machine, and he or she is standing there looking at you, and they're telling you, you need to eat from this machine. You need to. Because you're full of poison right now. They're telling you the truth. They're telling you exactly what you need to hear. Because you ingested the poison, the indoctrination in your mind, perhaps a physical poison, a mental poison, you think this person standing next to the machine that will save you from your own demise is lying to you. And so you double down on your distrust for the healthy things in life. And even though you're hungry, you go back to that first machine, you get some more poison. And this time, when you see that first machine, it's no longer threatening to you. There's no longer any perception that this is bad for you. In fact, It's like a bunch of little packages of crack cocaine in there, man, and you just gotta Jones for it. There's meth right there, there's heroin, and now you're like, oh God, I'm so glad I'm back at this first machine. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna sit right outside this machine. I'm just gonna take this until I die. And you take it and you feel good, but your destiny's long gone. That is sort of my thought process for the way that the world is working, which is why, you know, when you see people in many stories of life get addicted to drugs, and I don't really mean to make this a drug thing, because this is really more subtle than drugs. It is, you've been indoctrinated into a paradigm of existence that is super unhealthy for humanity and yourself. It may be so toxic that you lose your own life prior to even joining a society to participate in some horrible social, credit system or whatever it might be. You die. And that's sort of who made the machine and made that first machine. That's sort of the goal, is to get you stuck in that. The virologists in the 90s who studied AIDS and said, there's no such thing as AIDS, guys. HIV doesn't kill. If you get your blood tested and you have HIV, then you're safe, because it would have killed you if it was going to kill you. It will never destroy your T cells. And so they asked the virologist, they said, well, what's causing this immune deficiency thing? And they looked at the camera and they said, drugs and malnutrition. For Africa, it's malnutrition. For Americans, it's drugs. And they said, didn't you ever think for a second that there would be a repercussion for doing drugs in your body? Didn't you think at some point getting high constantly and messing with all the chemistry in your brain? What they said was introducing chemistry in your body, which they mean drugs. They said, didn't you think it would have an effect at some point? Did you really think you could do heroin constantly? And they tell people they catch AIDS from, passing around dirty needles. And these virologists, these world experts who said, show me the piece of paper that links HIV with immune deficiency problems. And no papers exists, as according to these guys. And they said, you're not catching anything besides destroying the chemistry in your body. Your T cells start to die off the more that you do heroin, especially. And whippets are the worst. The poppers, they're the worst. They destroy T cells. Exactly what they do is they go in and just annihilate you. But then you put, the medicine to cure this phantom condition is, it kills you like almost 100% at the time. Like, I think at this point it is 100% of the time it kills you. The notion is that life can get off balance, and that we have these vices that we develop with things that help us supposedly get past the bad stage in life. Unfortunately, a lot of the vices start to injure the brain, start to kill off brain cells. Now, of course, medicine is being turned into this as well, as we vaccinate ourselves with aluminum and mercury. It's the machine. It's the first machine. Oh, I definitely need that vaccination. Brr. My kid definitely needs that vaccination. Brr. And then your kid just loses their mind before you know it, and they're unable to deal with any minor complexity in life. And so then here comes the other chemical vices to deal with not being able to handle life. If you are blissfully living every second of your life, then I guess this episode has very little value to you whatsoever. If nothing else, it maybe hopefully confirms that you've done the right thing for you. It's good. If there are areas of your life where you're like, you know what, it's okay. It certainly could be a lot better. When I was a kid, they said life would be a lot better. It seems like when I was a kid, my grandparents' overall frequency was a lot more positive and happy than mine. Maybe it's time to disagree with the universe. And what I want to make sure that we distill out of this statement, and I don't know what L. Ron Hubbard's whole thought process. Again, I had this conveyed to me in a sentence, and it blew my mind, and that's all I've got. I didn't go into Dianetics and read about it. I didn't look up anything before I made this episode, which is obviously apparent to those who study him. But usually when we say we disagree with each other, that's a negative connotation. We are trying to agree on the best way to live life and the best way to manifest our destinies, right? When I say disagreeing with the universe, and I would assume, I would put money down if L. Ron Hubbard was right there in some ghostly form, or whoever he took that from, which his claim, as I understand it, was that he augmented other people's processes. But I would imagine whoever came up with this notion, that statement, whether it be him or someone else, this isn't a negative at all, disagreeing with the universe. I have lamented in episode after episode for 4 years that I think the universe wants us to become exceptional beings. Why else go in the loop of reincarnation forever? And again, if you're a Christian or some person who believes that this is it, you're an atheist, by God, disagreeing with the universe if you're not happy should be a guiding principle of every second of your life, because in your mind, this isn't going to happen again. This is going to be it. I tell you, if I ever believe that for 1 second, I mean, it's proof that I don't, although I try to live my life as profoundly as I possibly can. I don't know that I would do anything trivial in my life at all, except to experience what I might classify as trivial as a pure experiment. Let's go out tonight and do something trivial, just to feel what trivial feels like. But it would be an intentional experience. But I don't live with any, acidic worry in my life that I'm not doing those things, because I think this is sort of a marathon. This whole thing with massaging your soul, with trying to ingest things and accomplish things and see things from all dimensions. Some people get really worried if they get angry, because later they look back and go, oh my God, that was embarrassing. And it is sometimes when you say things you shouldn't say. I have been an expert at that in my lifetime. But it's those previous moments that I lived where I called someone a name that I shouldn't have said, or I did something that was very brutal. I mean, I don't backstab anybody. I don't step on anybody's head to get ahead. I'm right in your face, man. If we disagree up to a point, I'm going to be patient. And then there's this flipping point where I go, usually my tact for being coarse and rude is to say, stop being a pussy. Stop letting life tell you what to do. Stop telling people that you dislike and you disagree with to control your life. Be fair, be good. Make sure that you're not, worshiping this first vending machine, that you believe the grass is always greener on the other side. Sometimes that's true. A lot of times it's not true. The percentage of which one, that's totally dependent on the way you've structured your life. I truly, truly believe for those that aren't mentally ill by ingesting too much from this first vending machine, we all want the same things. We want to be left alone in terms of people doing us harm. We want people to be happy around us because we know that when you go to a party with people that are happy, you tend to absorb that frequency whether or not you came in grumpy or not. Last night, for instance, I worked all day long trying to crank out these episodes, get them all edited up there. But I was, doing some more engineering, and I'm having a blast. But it's brutal shit, man. It's like it totally takes down your energy levels. And I got to about 10 o'clock or so, and I will sing at this karaoke joint down the street, and it's like a family inside this place. It's beautiful. And I really, in my heart, I didn't, my chest, I didn't have the energy level. Like I couldn't really conceive of getting on stage and singing, because I sing some pretty intense stuff. But I went anyway, and I stepped in that door, and I sat down, and then my family's there, and we're all shaking hands, and we're so happy to see each other. We see each other every week, but it's still like, it's just fun to see these people. And all of a sudden, their frequency infested my frequency. Their energy infested my energy. And within 10 minutes, I was so glad I went. And this has happened to me a million times. I'm sure it's happened to you too. The day I met my high school sweetheart back when I was in the 80s, I remember I had spent the entire day inside. It was late May. School had just let out. I'm at home programming a new paint application on my Coco computer. version 2. My cousin called me up. He's like, dude, let's go to the pool. I'm like, it's still nice out. It's about 4 o'clock on a day where the sun's going to go down around 9 o'clock. And I kind of, pattered around a little bit. And then he's like, just get your ass out of the house, would you? And so it's probably one of the only cool things this dude's ever done in my life. And so I went with him, went down to the pool. He and I separated immediately. And I just found myself swimming in the pool. And I'm like, well, this is cool, man. This is like kind of what I needed. I needed this water around my body to kind of just pull the cork out of my butt of being inside for the entire winter, which is always brutal in Kansas. I look straight ahead, and there's this super cute girl with her best friend. And I knew her. Didn't know her best friend. And that was it, man. Her and I ended up dating for a year and a half after that. It was blissful. I disagree with my own universe. I disagree with being cooped up inside. I spent almost the entire summer at that pool, our gigantic pool. I still pounded out my software at home. But I had a new level of invigoration because life was good. I was in love, man. I was in love, for a year and a half. So take a look at your life. Remember, this is a game. And it's like a video game in that when you pass away, it's just like a video game. You get another life. But unlike most video games, it's more like an MMO. It's more like World of Warcraft. You die. You go into that ghost world. You got to go back to your body and you resurrect. Well, we don't go back to our body. We make a new one. Or someone else makes a new one. And you crawl inside it and you attach to it. Who knows if we're always human? Who knows? Who cares? Whatever we're doing, it's probably our choice in the first place. I have I don't know, I'm kind of torn. I think that once your soul reaches a certain level of sophistication, I doubt you go into a housefly. I doubt you go into a little spider. I doubt you do that because, I don't know, seems like it'd be a waste of your faculties. Maybe if you're a big jerk, that's the only option you got. But I think it'll be okay even if you did. I think we stay an upper construct of life. Not sure I'd want to be a tree for a few hundred years. But maybe that's blissful, who knows? But take a look at your life and see if there's anything you disagree with. And again, it doesn't mean your life is miserable. Maybe it's just boring. And maybe, again, you don't do these 90-degree turns. Maybe you don't do an acute angle backwards. You just do a little tiny course adjustment. But if you're surrounded by bad energy, that's an imperative that you get away from that bad energy. So plan. Don't just run out and do something right away. Sometimes you can do that, but that's sort of like, closing your eyes and jumping off a cliff and hoping there's water down there. It's probably not the best plan. Look down. Make sure there's something there. Throw a big rock down there and see if it hits something that's only 6 inches down in the water, because you might crush yourself. Make sure it's good. Maybe not jump from someplace so high. Do something interesting for you based on your interests. Maybe do something to benefit someone else because you don't have any needs anymore. Or at this current point in time, you're good. But your spouse needs something, your kid needs something, your friend needs something, the world needs something. I don't know where I gained the opinion that life was a game, like a video game, but I think it was in my 20s. And there's just something about that paradigm shift in my brain that for me made life wonderful. It made it like, oh yeah, I can do a lot more than I thought I could, and that's always the case. Again, when I teach students that think that they're not creative, I'll just share this last thing with you here. I shared this once before, but people who can't watch scary movies often will say to you in a different conversation, completely out of the context of film watching, that they're not creative. And I'll look at them and say, that's not true. You are invariably creative. You are actually probably extra creative in that when you see a scary thing, the reason why you don't watch scary movies is that when you go to bed at night or whatever, usually it's bed at night sort of thing, You are thinking about the scary movie, and it's still there. It's still freaking you out. If you're watching a zombie show on TV, you think zombies are in your closet, underneath your bed. When you go to the bathroom, they're going to pop out of nowhere. As irrational as that is, you know that they don't exist. But you're so creative. You live in almost a daytime dream state of creativity. Whereas I think, when I go to bed, my wild-ass dreams start to occur. I live in a whole other world. For me, it's very realistic. For some weird reason in my dreams, if I do bump into something that's a monster, which is very, very rare, I'm almost like looking at it really close. I'm like, whoa, dude, you're a zombie. It's like, don't go away. Hold still. I'm going to look at you for a little bit, But we underestimate ourselves all the time. And if you really think it through, think about this. Are you an alien that's completely a different species than me personally? I'm not going to bet on that. It might be true. Maybe all the races of the world, all the different colored skins and hairs and whatever on everybody's head, and the different body types. Maybe we are all from a different constellation in the universe, and they all kind of got together and put us down here in this petri dish, and they're starting watching us from UFOs and going, wow, look at that. Not indoctrinated to hate each other. These people actually got along. Without indoctrinating them to hate each other, these two people manifested a man-made religion and started killing each other. That's weird. Maybe they're experimenting with how stupid we are, or instinctually out of alignment that we are. But let's just say we're all part of that group that wants to get along, which I think is generally everybody, minus indoctrination to change your mind. But now, how can one human being be super left brain and be able to do calculus on the first day and get a straight A, and the other person can't figure it out? And that person who can't figure it out can paint photoreal paintings by hand. This Leonardo Mona Lisa capability. We're the same species. And so even if your family or your race or whatever, your nation, didn't offer you the education and the arcs to get onto that, if you can hear my voice and understand what I'm saying right now, then you have all the mental faculties and capabilities to go learn calculus if that's something you want to learn, and you've always been crappy at it, or you don't even know if you're good at it. There's so many great courses on YouTube. Or you want to learn how to paint? My God, look up YouTube. Painting faces photoreal how-to tutorial. Watch the video. You don't have any art supplies, right? Watch the video, see what they're using to paint. Stop the video, go to your local art store, grab a little kit. You have these kits for like $20. Oil paints, acrylics, watercolors, sketch pencils, pins, whatever the hell you need. You can get into it for less than $50. Get yourself a canvas or a piece of paper or a canvas board or whatever the hell you want to get into. I'm just using art as an example because it's the fastest way that people underestimate what they can do. And then go back home, set everything up, get yourself a little easel or a book you can back something up against, and one by one, just copy what they're doing. And eventually, you'll get your own desires to paint something different than what's in the tutorial. Like me in screenwriting, you'll come up with your own techniques of shading and doing gradients. Maybe you jump into acrylics and what you really want is oil paints. Maybe you jump into oil paints and you want to go into gouache. Maybe you go into painting and you really want to be a sketch artist. Whatever the hell it is, don't stop just because one doesn't work out. Just keep going. It's a fun experience. You give yourself enough time to go through the torment of learning to see if you got it. Disagree with the universe. Change things. Anyway, I think that's about all I got on this. Hopefully you felt me on this one. This kind of stuff drives me every single day. And there's so many frontiers for the mind. It's when you really realize how many frontiers there are, which is infinite, and you even can quantify things down to a countable numeric value of things you could possibly do. It's still more than you can do in a single lifetime. So with all things, you prioritize things that are more exciting than other things. Go do the things that are at the top of your pyramid of interest. Improve yourself. Have fun. Experiment. Find people like you. Find people that already do what you want to do. And just be real straightforward with them. Say, look, man, I have always had this desire to paint or write music or whatever, learn math, but I'm really crappy at it right now. It's never clicked in my brain. Could you help it click in my brain? And, arrange sessions with them. You'll usually find these people in your family or your friend family circles in life. And they're more than thrilled to death to share with you their love because they're good at it. And just prep the pump by saying, look, I'm probably going to be a frustrating person for you at first, but please don't give up on me. Let's do this. What I've tried to do with this series is put enough things into episodes that either you're learning it directly from the episode or I am juicing your brain and your heart so much, there's a lot of season 1 stuff, that you're just chomping at the bit, man. You're ready to go. Because I tell you what, if I ever had this show when I was a kid, I would have avoided, 30 to 50% of the wasteful, do it myself, do it wrong, learn it the hard way techniques. And I would be much further in my life. As much as I might say I would never change a thing in my life, that's sort of a defense mechanism for the way that you ended up, You would change a few things, especially all the pain and the hurt. You would moderate it a little bit. It's obviously very good to go through some uncomfortable things in life to learn what you're made out of. Like I always tell soldiers, whether they be 92 years old and they invaded Omaha Beach or whether or not they just came back from some deployment overseas in the Middle East, they know so much more about themselves having gone through these eyes of the needles, But that happens here at home too, without a gun ever in their hand, without ever firing a bullet in anger or fear. Life kicks your ass 24/7. Anyway, if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. It's where there's audio and video so you can change your feed back and forth. You have a couple social media outlets. Facebook has a locked Facebook group. Come on in. Make sure you answer the question or just say something human is what I say. So just say something human when you apply, because I'll just block you if you don't. And then you can't apply again. So that's why it's a finite thing. There are a couple ways to contribute to the show financially. There's Patreon and PayPal. You can install the Brave browser from my link. Brave browser is awesome. Well, we try to say that several times. And there's a new link to Season 1, which is much better, remastered, better audio, lots of pauses and weird things fixed in it. So it's starting to pick up, actually. The viewership is every single day, and there's several people viewing episodes several times a day, so that's a big difference. It'll only ever have probably about 97 episodes in it, because I've turned some of them off. But there's some special reports in there, so maybe it hits 100. I don't know. I'm not there yet. But until next time, disagree with the universe. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.